Well, thank you all for joining today's webinar. My name is Roger Cottrell. I am president of Simplex BI. Today we're going to talk about the Sierra experience on what it means to move to Aderant Sierra. But before we get started, just a little bit about Simplex BI. We are a consulting organization, and we are focused on providing services to Aderant firms. And we really focus in on trying to help firms get the most value out of their system. So we focus on a host of different services, including general consulting, implementation, project management, as well as a heavy focus on business intelligence and reporting. So we service just about all of your Aderant needs. So today, in addition to myself, I have my business partner, Ivan Stokatelny. Ivan will be fielding your questions today. And as we go along, I'd like to keep these webinars pretty informal. As we go along, if you could submit any questions you might have through the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and ask the question. Be great if we can get a conversation going. Additionally, we have one of our clients with us today, James Norton. James is Director of Accounting and Financial Systems at Van Ness Feldman in Washington, D.C. And we worked with James and his firm to help them move over to Sierra, and they went live in the middle of March of this year. So towards the end of the webinar, we are going to engage in a conversation with James so that you can get his perspective on Sierra, the reasons that his firm chose it, and the process of moving over to that Sierra system. And we'll also give you an opportunity to ask questions at the end so that you can be more educated on Sierra. So let's first just talk a little bit about what is Expert Sierra. Well, it is Aderant Expert in the cloud. Okay? So obviously, lots of software companies have moved to the cloud, and Aderant has made that jump as well. Okay? Now, there was a previous version of Sierra, and I know at least some of the participants on this webinar actually went on version 1 of Sierra, which was a multi-tenant system, which essentially means that in a multi-tenant system, you share servers, and there are multiple databases on the same server. So you have multiple clients coming into the same place. Well, the latest version of Sierra, version 2, is a single tenant system. And what that means is, while you're connected to the cloud, you have servers that are dedicated to your firm. Nobody else is accessing those servers. There's no sharing of databases or any type of system resources. So your data is 100% secure. And it's really just as if you took your on-premise set of servers and moved them up to the cloud. So you have a database server, at least 2 application servers, depending on the size of the firm, and all the other servers that go into making up the Aderant infrastructure. Okay? One of the advantages of moving to the cloud that is very attractive for some firms is that Aderant now manages all of the servers for you. Okay? So they're in the cloud, and Aderant is responsible for all of the Windows updates to those servers, all of the backups, right, and the disaster recovery. Okay? So this really takes a lot of burden off of your firm and your firm's IT staff. I have found especially with firms in, say, the 50 timekeeper to 200, 250 timekeeper range. The IT staff is not huge. And sometimes firms have someone in-house that totally knows the Aderant system and can maintain it well, but many firms don't. So moving to the cloud really helps overcome that staffing and knowledge issue. Another very attractive thing about Sierra is that all upgrades and patches are included. So of course you pay for it somewhere, right? But any of you that has gone through an Aderant upgrade on your on-premise system, the upgrade itself, the software is free, but typically you need to engage with professional services in order to actually install the upgrade in a test environment. There may be some additional work that needs to be done. And then when you go live, you're typically relying on Aderant's professional services. And those upgrades can cost, $10,000 to $15,000 at a minimum. Okay? So as part of your subscription to Aderant Expert Sierra, you're given a live system and a test system. Okay? So in that test system, you can request that Aderant refresh the data in that test system and apply any new patches or upgrades in the test environment. And that's part of the subscription. So you are then able to go in and do all of your testing. And once you've completed your testing, you have a scheduled date to have those patches or upgrades applied to the live system. So let's talk about what the Sierra system looks like. Some people think that this might be a dumbed down or limited version of Aderant. Okay? I can tell you that Expert Sierra in version 2 includes all expert capabilities. Okay? So all of the software applications that are available today are available in the cloud, except for Clearview. So if anyone out there is using the Clearview product, it does not make the move to the cloud. I think there were certain technical issues that they couldn't overcome with that product, but you have full-fledged Aderant Expert. It's just in a different place, not in your server room. So with that, you have full customization capabilities. You can modify forms, set up alerts, have custom workflows, and essentially doing everything that you're doing with your on-premise system today. Okay? When you move over from an on-premise system to the cloud system, Aderant refers to this process as lift and shift. And the concept is they're going to lift up all of your data from your on-premise system and shift it over to the cloud. Okay? So they are moving that entire database and all of the configuration settings over. So when you move from your on-premise to the cloud, all of the data transfers over, all of your configurations, build templates, all of your historical build templates and images come over. Okay, so there's no loss of data, no loss of customizations or configurations. Okay? And as I alluded to earlier, your current software license and annual maintenance goes away, and it shifts to an annual subscription model. Okay? So you are paying each year for the software, the maintenance, and the use of the cloud servers. Okay. Any questions so far, Ivan? Anything come in yet?
No, nothing yet.
So just to take a look, give you a kind of a visual of what this looks like. Okay. The current setup for Aderant Sierra is that each one of your offices gets connected to Amazon Web Services or AWS. That's where Aderant is hosting the software. Okay? So each office gets connected via a point-to-point VPN to those servers. Okay? And there is what's called a trust set up so that the AWS servers can talk to your servers in the New York office and your other offices, and the same way. So it's a bi-directional trusted relationship. Now, this is changing, but under the current configuration, users must be connected to one of your offices in order to access Aderant. Okay? So if you're sitting in the New York office, okay, you are, of course, connected to the firm's network. Therefore, you're connected to Aderant in the cloud. If you are at home and you want to run Aderant, you first need to connect to your firm's VPN or via Citrix to get on your firm's network. So in a sense, the Aderant cloud is an extension of the firm's network. Now, there's a couple of exceptions to that, and as I mentioned, it's changing, but I wanted to tell you where things stand right now. So the exceptions are that the web-based applications, such as on-the-go time, on-the-go workflow, on-the-go billing, and expert inquiries, do not require a VPN connection. So you can connect directly to the cloud and run on-the-go time. Okay? However, if you want to run any of the smart apps, so expert time, collections, expert billing, you do need to establish that connection to your firm's network. With an upcoming release, and we're told it is at the end of this month, Aderant is eliminating that need with an enhanced authentication process. So in this future version, this very near future version, if I'm at home, and as long as I have an internet connection and I run expert billing, I will be able to access my Aderant data without having to establish that connection to one of the offices. Okay. Last item here is that there are some applications that are run via remote desktop. Okay. So Aderant Classic or App Shell, Expert Admin, Expert Security Design Studio, those are all run via a remote desktop connection. Okay? So it's just a little wrinkle in how they've set this up in order to connect to those applications. Okay.
Roger, there's a question.
Yep.
This is from Chris. They mostly use classic app shell, which is susceptible to latency when it comes to VPNs. The question is, how does classic perform on Sierra?
We've had no issues, Chris, because they do move to a remote desktop model. So you could connect via a browser to AWS, and then you launch a remote desktop session. Aderant does charge, as part of the subscription, you get a certain number of remote desktop users. But if you have a lot of people that are accessing Classic at one time, you may have to increase that licensing. But I haven't seen any issues running Classic.
I was just gonna say we run Classic, and it's just right off the like a remote desktop, and we have no problems with it. Maybe just a half a second difference than on premise, and I'm at the main office, and we're really not seeing it. I was out west last week, and there are just really no latency issues that we were experiencing.
Great, thanks, James. All right, let's talk a little bit about the implementation. So Aderant tries to have these these implementations done in 12 to 16 weeks. Personally, I think that's a little bit aggressive. When we talk with James, you'll see that we took a little bit more time. There were certain reasons for that, and we'll go into that. But the way the process works is once you sign a contract, the first step really happens behind the scenes, where your IT department is going to work with Aderant's cloud operations team to establish that connection that I was talking about before to AWS. So you're working on establishing that trust relationship across the internet. So it's a little bit of a slow start to the project, because most of us are accustomed to having a kickoff meeting and then we jump into it. But the professional services team doesn't really engage until this technical piece is done. So once that network connection is established, Aderant builds that environment on the AWS cloud. So all of your servers are set up at that point. And so once that's done, the professional services team will engage with you, work through your project plan, et cetera. And one of the first things you're going to do is the test upgrade. Okay? So assuming you're not already on the latest version, your system will be upgraded as part of this process. So if you're on 8.1, and you go to the cloud, you would be upgraded to the latest version of 8.2.2. If you're on 8.2.1, they would upgrade it to the latest version of 8.2.2. Okay? So you provide a backup and all of the system files, and those get copied up to the cloud. They run the upgrade, and once that is complete, they turn the system over to you for testing. Okay? That process does not take very long once they start. Probably a week to get the data transferred and the upgrade done. So as with any upgrade, you have to be very diligent with your testing and troubleshooting. As we went through the process with James, we certainly found some things that weren't working properly, needed to be reconfigured or fixed. We had a few build template issues related to the upgrade as opposed to necessarily the cloud. Those were easy to fix. Most likely your end users will need some level of training, and I'll talk about why in a minute. And then once you are done with all of your testing, you'll go through a final upgrade. So you'll make another backup of your on-premise system. You'll copy that up to the cloud. Aderant will rerun the upgrade on that fresh data, and then you'll be up and running. We were able to do the upgrade over the weekend. It started Friday evening, and Saturday morning, James and I were in there starting some testing before our go live. And then we rolled it out firm-wide Monday morning. Any questions about the implementation process?
Roger, you might want to mention also what happened with us in EIS.
Yeah, so we're gonna, so we've got another slide here of the important issues. So a couple of things that you need to be aware of. So first off, all end user access is via EA Pro and EA Pro Mobile. Okay? So this is where I talked about end users needing some training. Expert Assistant goes away completely. Okay? And all applications now are accessed via EA Pro. So if you have not already implemented EA Pro at your firm, you've got a change going on. it's not that big of change, right? But you do want to make sure that all of your users have seen EA Pro and received somewhere between 30 minutes and 60 minutes of training, depending on all the changes that you're making during the upgrade. James and I went through and trained all of the timekeepers at his firm. We showed them how to access the system. We showed them expert inquiries. And by the end of the session, we were helping them configure their mobile application. So just be aware that there is an end user impact across the firm to get everyone to EA Pro. The next big thing here is third-party software is not allowed on the Sierra servers. This can be very troubling for some of you. And since James already mentioned it, his firm uses Randy Steer, which is now Iridium's EIS program. And the design of that EIS system actually used custom tables in the Aderant database, and the application would run on the Aderant server and read those tables. That is not allowed in the Sierra environment. Only the Aderant software can run on the Aderant servers. Now, you can overcome that, and you do that by leaving these systems on premise and setting up a Ivan, I'm losing I just lost the term there.
The link server.
A linked server, thank you. So, you know, in the case of Van Ness, they had a SQL server, and they essentially brought down a copy of those Aderant tables and set up that linked server between this new EIS server and the Aderant system. So there's a constant update of the data, but then EIS actually runs on that local server. That local server is actually in the cloud as well, but they did have to set up this process to bring that data down. Okay. And that will could apply to some other integrations that you might have in the system. Now, things like flat files, positive pay files, those types of things, those still run on the Aderant servers. I think we set it up so that we are doing a data transfer to pull that data off of the servers and then load them up to the bank or wherever they need to go. But we had a little extra work because of this issue, but we certainly got through it. Now, another item is that you are not allowed to do direct updates to the database via SQL. That's their rule, but there are always exceptions to the rule. I believe if you sign a waiver or some type of risk acknowledgement that says, anything you screw up is your problem, Aderant's not liable for it, you can gain access to the SQL server to do these updates. But without that special release, you will have read-only access via SQL Management Studio. Another thing that we came across in that James's firm was on Classic AP, and they had many legal administrators, secretaries who used Expert AP to actually enter expense reports, credit card charges. And while Aderant would have preferred that we not move to Expert AP as part of this project, we elected to do that. And so we moved to Expert AP and implemented a very basic new invoice workflow. Okay. Now, what we found in doing this was that we actually had to move the check template over to DocuDraft. Expert AP does not require you to have your check template in DocuDraft, but because of some technical issues around printing, we did have to move to DocuDraft, which anyone that's tried to get their check programmed and approved by the bank knows that it's a big pain in the butt because you need to get things aligned. So that was a little bit of a curveball that we ran into, but we got through it. And then the other big issue we had was workflow resources. So James's firm uses file opening workflow, and just, that system needed to be upgraded. And we ran into a lot of issues there and almost missed our go live date. And when we went live, there were some things that weren't right. So you need to make sure that Aderant is providing the right workflow resources. And this is probably the one kind of limiting factor on your timeline to make sure that any workflow updates get done. So I can take a couple questions here, but I want to turn it over to James pretty quickly here.
I do have a few questions in the chat, and I might not get to all of them, but does Aderant have API support for anything like time entry, conflicts, MBI, anything like Intap, other vendors? Do they expose a way to write back to the database without directly writing back to the database?
You can use the APIs, as far as I know, the existing API. I mean, the Aderant API is pretty old and clunky. That's the old SOAP API. We didn't have any systems that required the API. Definitely something you would want to explore further with Cloud Ops, but I think that is allowed.
Okay. Another question was, what type of web services does Sierra offer? Any kind of support for real-time triggers on the cloud notifications, as well as running real-time reporting from the cloud data, which the real-time reporting you kind of addressed, I think, with the linked server. As well as, they do have SSRS reports that run directly off of they have an SSRS report environment linked directly to their live environment. But
right, so you'll have an SSRS server. Any custom SSRS reports that you have today, you just copy over and update the data source. So those will still work.
What about, do they offer any kind of web services or database triggers that can be utilized?
Not that I'm aware of, but definitely something you'd want to follow up on. I'm going to pause there, Ivan, and we can come back to some questions. We are happy to stay on longer today, but I do want to make sure that we get to James. So James, if you want to turn your video back on, we can chat a little bit. So James, maybe you could start with a little bit of background on why you were in a position to consider Sierra, what was going on at the firm, and how you ultimately made that decision.
Yeah, so we were looking at how to improve our system. We were on 8.1.1 at the time. We had tried about a year or so before to go with a 8.2.1 upgrade, but kind of ran out of a time delay at the end of the year. So we were in need of kind of upgrading and just figuring out what would work best for our firm. As you probably all know, 8.1.1 had a lot of bugs with it. So people on time entry side and on our billing side were really kind of suffering through a lot of the bugs that we were finding. So we were trying to figure out what would be the best for them. In addition to it, our IT staff is actually pretty limited, so that when we did encounter problems or we did encounter issues and we did need maintenance on our servers and everything else like that, we were pretty short-staffed. So we didn't have the really reliability of being able to count heavily on our IT staff to kind of work on the maintenance, oversee the bugs, see the other issues, also work on the upgrades and so on and so forth. And then the other thing that we were looking at is we're possibly moving office locations, our main office location, in another year or two. And what does it mean for having the servers on site versus, hosted remotely on a cloud server, or, having them Aderant look at it. So we kind of looked at all those options. We really thought hard and long about kind of the maintenance aspect of it. And if we had any issues or any problems, we can go talk to Aderant and they can fix it. And then also on it, kind of redundancy and resiliency of that, if our servers were to go down, we can pretty much have them spin another one up and be back online within, hours or days, or, within a short amount of time, rather than us having to worry about spinning up brand new servers, getting all the components and restarting over again if we ever had a major issue. So that was kind of some peace of mind that we had with it. And then we also we're a multi-office environment. So we have offices all the way out here in DC and then Seattle and California. And so the people in Seattle and California were definitely experiencing some lagging, some delays, especially on the smart apps, expert time and expert billing. So we were looking at a way that, our whole firm could get a better experience with performance, which we were not 100% on going into Sierra, but quite frankly, I think everybody here on the main, like Aderant, has been really impressed by the speed and resiliency that we've seen of being able to connect to the firm and run the smart apps and the web-based products.
Yeah, it was kind of a situation where we were pretty sure it was going to be faster when we got to the cloud, but there was no guarantees until we got there. And really, we've had great performance coming from Seattle and California. So that was quite a relief. So James, talk a little bit about the implementation process. I know we took about six to 7 months. Why did it take longer than, say, the 12 to 16 that Aderant would try to recommend?
So on a couple of things we've done, we tried to do an upgrade before with Aderant and a couple other issues, and even our go live converting from Elite to Aderant in the beginning. We've always seen kind of, and I hate to say it, kind of a delay in getting resources with Aderant. So we were pretty cautious about that. And actually, to take it back a step, the one thing that we really spent a lot of time, and it was awful doing it, but it was really paid off in the end, was getting our contracts correct and right and getting everything that we wanted in those contracts, so that when things did arise, it was covered in these contracts. One of the things that Roger was talking about earlier, they actually had as the initial terms of the contract that we'd only do testing 8 weeks and then go live. And so the amount of testing and, just kind of things that we never could have imagined would have came up. So the 16 weeks, which we elected to do, was a huge lifesaver. I think we actually pushed it out a couple of weeks on top of that because of our dead period in year-end closing. But getting the contract right and just really kind of going after what you want and what you need to see in there really was a big payoff. When we finally did get it signed, the resources started coming in, and Roger said this a little bit before. The workflow was one of our biggest issues. We basically said in the beginning, we need this resource, we need it now. And as Roger said, it was kind of a delay. But the overall process, I was surprisingly easy to do the lift and shift. They lifted it. We weren't even offline or anything like that. They just kind of took a copy of our database, threw it up there. I think there was a couple other things that we had to schedule with our IT department to make sure that everything was there. But overall, just have your ducks in a row before that, because they have a limited window of time where they can do it and do everything. We did have a weird subnet mask issue when we went live with it, but we were able to figure it out. The only other issue that we kind of had in the beginning was the individual offices connecting to the AWS server. And I believe we had like a firewall issue in one. There was on a secondary firewall. Like, it was just small little things that caused these delays that, kind of, made our project go a little bit longer. And then there was the other part of having to use Experts AP because we weren't going to get enough licenses to have all of our legal assistants do the stuff up there. But then I think the check template was unique to the Sierra environment. So like, it wasn't just because we wouldn't move to AP, but it was there. So we had to kind of rework that, redo certain aspects of it. And then just availability of your staff. You really want to do a good, thorough job of kind of putting everything through and doing everything. And quite frankly, we used Roger, as you probably know, but he was a great resource of just being able to triage our issues and our problems of what needs to be escalated to Aderant and what can he fix or what can we fix on our own. So that actually gave us a huge cost savings on what we're estimated with Aderant. So, our Aderant hours actually were under budget. Rogers were a little bit over budget, but that was because we just literally kind of took so much out of Aderant's hands at the end of it and just kind of handed it over to Roger. So that was more our decision than, anything on Roger or anything. But yeah, overall, and then the training was a big portion of it. As Roger mentioned, getting everybody up to EA Pro. And it was actually a good time to reintroduce people to Aderant and get them back on page one of what you want and need them to see. And then the other part of EA Pro and kind of setting up the dashboard and the inquiries took a little bit more time than I would have thought, but you want to get it right for your firm and then right for your firm and the levels within it. And seeing that as a new aspect or item, it actually took a lot longer to kind of really fine tune that, and it's trying to carve out time with everything else that you're doing and focus on that. So we're still rolling certain elements out of it, but we had everything that we pretty much wanted up and running at the time.
So looking back, James, we've been live April, May, 3.5 months now. Would you do it again?
Yeah, I think that it's been beneficial. I think we still have things that we still want to work on, but it's not because of Aderant or Sierra. It's just kind of improvements on the processes and what we're doing and how we're using everything. The one thing actually on the cautionary side of things is that we're all now in a remote environment. And it just kind of reminded me, one of the issues that we did have was getting some of the software pushed to people's computers when they were not connected via VPN or, directly connected to the law firm's network. We have a lot of people, probably as you all do, now spread across the United States in 20 different states and so on and so forth. So that was another thing that was kind of eye-opening to us of how much extra work we had to do to get, make sure everything was installed correctly on everybody's computer.
Yeah, and I mean that installation is very limited, but it has to happen. So if you're launching, some of you are aware, if you're launching smart apps from EA Pro, they utilize a program called Expert Launcher. So that Expert Launcher program, which is just a little exe file, needs to get installed on everyone's desktop. And if you're not in the office, it's hard to push things out over VPN. You don't know when people are going to connect. So we would get calls where people said that the system's not working, and really all it was that Expert Launcher wasn't installed. So I'm going to give us time to come back to James in a minute if there's additional questions, but I did want to just talk a little bit about the services that Simplex can provide as part of your Sierra implementation, or in fact any on-premise upgrade that you might be going through. So we actually got involved with James's firm very early on to evaluate how they should move forward. They knew they needed to upgrade. Was it best to stay on-prem, go to Sierra, et cetera? So we did an analysis of that. James and I worked very closely together. Ultimately, once we selected Sierra, we assisted the firm with getting the right SOW together with Aderant and reviewing the contract. And then I was the internal project manager. So James and I worked very closely together throughout the project. I facilitated the communication with Aderant. We got involved in developing a test plan, making sure the various functional areas, billing, accounts payable, were staying on top of their testing, making sure we were addressing any issues. And then as James mentioned, we took on a lot of the configuration, which I think sped things up and saved the firm money. And that includes getting EA Pro configured, the expert inquiries and such. And then we were available for them with the go live support. We also, with our expertise with the SSRS reports, helped make sure that all of those custom SSRS reports were moved over and functioning properly. So if you are considering a move to Sierra, we do have a special offer today. It's only $19.99 on 3 payments. I'm kidding. So we would love to provide a free consultation to you and your firm. We'll spend at least 2 hours with you, which is a value of $500. We can talk about your current situation, what makes sense for the firm, and what that process would look like if you were to choose to move to Sierra. So I encourage you to sign up for that consultation if you are interested. And Ivan and I would really love to meet with you all. Ivan, any more questions come in?
Yeah, here's a good generic one. Generic meaning general. As far as backups go, disaster recovery. The question's very specific. How often do the backups happen? What actually gets backed up?
Yeah, I think you'd have to dig in with the cloud operations team at Aderant a little bit more. I'm sure it is industry standards. They are very focused on their certification. So I suspect the backups are occurring more often than what you're doing on premise, and that there is greater redundancy available there. And another advantage of the Sierra environment is, if the system, if for some reason the system is not running fast enough at any given point in time, there could be some communication issue within the servers. They can ramp up your CPU and other available technical resources to make sure things are functioning properly and with appropriate speed. Any other questions?
I think that's good for now. I sent a message to a few people. I can follow up with them on any specific questions, but I think that covers the bulk of it.
Okay. And just let me look and see. Okay, yeah, nothing here. So James, I want to thank you for your participation today. I hope your perspective provided some good input to the folks that are on the call here. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. And please feel free to follow up with any questions. And we will be sending you an email to give you access to sign up for that free consultation if you are interested. And hopefully I'll be talking to some of you soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.